Trauma Bay. Why do people believe in religion? Why do billions across the world follow stories that, if taken out of context, would be hard to distinguish from myth or folklore? It's a question that isn't just philosophical, it's deeply psychological. Belief in religion isn't always about truth. Often, it's about the mind trying to make sense of chaos. It's about finding safety in an unpredictable world. The human brain isn't designed to seek truth as much as it's designed to seek comfort, familiarity, and control. This becomes clear when you understand how easily people adopt belief systems that contradict evidence, logic, and even their own life experiences. As children, we don't have filters for truth. We believe what we're told, especially by authority figures. This isn't stupidity, it's survival. If a child questions every instruction from a parent in a dangerous environment, they might not make it. So we evolved with a tendency to trust authority, especially when we're vulnerable. Now apply that to religion. The earliest stories we hear about life, death, right and wrong often come from religious voices, parents, teachers, communities. And because those messages come early, they form part of the brain's foundation. Later in life, when new information contradicts that foundation, it creates discomfort. Not because it's wrong, but because it challenges the structure people have built their lives on. That discomfort has a name: cognitive dissonance. The brain doesn't like holding two conflicting beliefs at the same time, so it either adapts or it resists. And most people resist. It's easier to dismiss facts than it is to dismantle a worldview you've lived in for decades. Religious belief also fills psychological needs. One of the deepest human fears is uncertainty. What happens when we die? Why do people suffer? Is there meaning in pain? Religion answers all these questions, even if the answers aren't grounded in reality. It offers certainty in a world that provides none. It tells people that their suffering has a reason, that they are watched over, that death isn't the end. These are emotionally soothing ideas. And when people are in pain, they reach for soothing ideas more than accurate ones. A study published in Science found that people under stress, especially social or existential stress, are more likely to perceive patterns where none exist. They're more likely to believe in supernatural explanations. It's not just comfort-seeking. It's how the brain tries to regain a sense of control. The illusion of control is more comforting than the truth of chaos. Religious belief also activates the brain's reward system. Participating in rituals, praying, going to religious gatherings, all of these stimulate dopamine release. Not because there's a deity responding, but because these acts are embedded with emotional significance. It's a bit like a placebo. The body responds not to the actual power of the prayer, but to the belief that it's doing something powerful. That belief alone changes brain chemistry. Then there's the tribe factor. Humans are social creatures. Loneliness and isolation are experienced as pain in the brain, real, measurable pain. Religion offers community. It provides shared beliefs, rituals, and identities. That's powerful. Belonging to a group, especially one that believes it's chosen or special, reinforces self-worth. It creates a feedback loop. The group validates the belief, and the belief keeps the group united. Anyone who questions it becomes a threat, not just to the doctrine, but to the cohesion of the group. And this is why people often react so aggressively when their beliefs are questioned. It's not just about theology, it's about identity. Criticize the belief, and you're indirectly criticizing the person. You're poking at their emotional foundation, their source of comfort, their connection to others. That's why logical arguments rarely work on believers. The belief didn't come from logic. It came from need. Even when facts are presented clearly, historical contradictions, moral inconsistencies, scientific explanations, believers often double down. It's called the backfire effect. When core beliefs are challenged, people often become more committed to them. not because the belief is correct, but because their brain is defending the structure that holds their emotional world together. Another reason religion persists is the way it manipulates guilt and fear. Think about the concept of eternal punishment, the idea that you'll suffer forever if you don't believe. That's not just fear-based, it's emotional blackmail. It creates a psychological trap. You're not free to question without risking everything. Even entertaining doubt becomes dangerous, and so people suppress it. There's also the moral authority argument. Many believe that without religion, morality would collapse. But this ignores the fact that moral behavior existed before religious texts were written, and that moral frameworks have evolved in secular societies without divine guidance. In fact, research from places like Scandinavia, where secularism is high and religious belief is low, shows stronger social safety nets, lower crime rates, and higher levels of trust. If religion were necessary for morality, those places would be falling apart. But they aren't. They're thriving. Still, religion keeps people obedient. That's one of its oldest functions. When people believe they're being watched by an invisible judge, they behave differently. Not necessarily better, just more constrained. In societies where religion was used to control behavior, especially in the absence of law enforcement or social order, this made sense historically. But today, those same systems are used not to maintain peace, but to control thought, suppress dissent, and keep institutions in power. Religious belief is also sticky. It passes easily across generations, not through evidence, but through emotional conditioning. A child doesn't accept religion because it's true. They accept it because it's all they know. And by the time critical thinking develops, the belief is already fused with their identity. Questioning it feels like betrayal. It's not just about ancient myths, it's about how belief adapts to survive. When parts of a religion are exposed as outdated or false, new interpretations emerge to protect the core. Beliefs evolve just like species, mutating to stay alive. It's why some faiths now accept evolution, despite once violently opposing it. It's not about truth. It's about survival of the belief system. People often say, faith is a virtue. But what is faith, really? It's believing without evidence, trusting in something despite contradictions. In any other part of life, that would be called delusion. If someone believed their neighbor could fly just because they felt it was true, we wouldn't call that virtue. We'd call it denial. But when it's wrapped in religious language, it becomes sacred. What's more revealing is how religious belief varies depending on where you're born. Your religion is more likely to be determined by geography than by personal discovery. If you were born in India, you'd likely be Hindu. In Saudi Arabia, Muslim. In Utah, Mormon. If religious belief were universal truth, it wouldn't depend so heavily on zip code. But it does. That alone should raise questions. And yet, many still hold on, not because they've reasoned through every doctrine, but because letting go feels like jumping off a psychological cliff. Letting go of religion means accepting uncertainty, accepting responsibility, accepting that there may not be an ultimate plan, that life might be random, and meaning might be something we create, not something handed down. That's not an easy pill to swallow. But it's also freeing. When people finally step outside religious belief, many describe a strange clarity, a calm, a sense of ownership over their lives. Not because they now have all the answers, but because they're no longer pretending to. They stop fearing punishment for thinking. They stop twisting their mind into knots to justify contradictions. They start asking better questions, not just accepting old answers. The psychology of religious belief is not about stupidity. It's about vulnerability. It's about the human brain doing what it can to feel safe, loved, and significant. But just because a belief feels good doesn't make it true. Just because it comforts you doesn't mean it's right. The real test of an idea isn't whether it soothes you, it's whether it holds up under pressure. And most religious beliefs don't. They survive not because they're supported by evidence, but because they're protected by emotion, community, and fear. But truth doesn't need protection. It doesn't fear questions. It doesn't crumble when challenged. Religious belief may once have served a purpose in early civilization, but today it often holds people back, from thinking freely, from growing intellectually, from connecting across divides. It builds walls where there should be bridges. It creates conflict where there could be understanding. And most of all, it keeps people from confronting the most difficult yet liberating truth, that we are responsible for our own meaning. No gods, no final judges, just us. And that's more than enough.